an amazing individual, and I also want to make sure that I let you know that today's program is being live streamed, so it is being recorded. And turn off your cell phones if you have them, and please save your questions until the end. We'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. Might be after we actually end. We're going to stop at 4:30, so anybody who has to leave can do that. But then Cheryl has kindly agreed to stay later. So Cheryl is actually a professional singer and musician who traveled extensively throughout the U.S. She's been lecturing on Dreams and Reincarnation for over 20 years, and I know you'll find that hard to believe because she definitely does not look that old. She moved from Buffalo, New York to Virginia Beach to follow an avid interest in the Cayce materials, and that brought her right here to A.R.E. She worked in just about every department, and she does a lot of journaling. She's on journal number 195. She combined her practical understanding and application of her experiences into a number of intriguing and inspiring workshops. So not only does she speak, but she also does workshops. She's been featured on various radio programs, including our own Reflections, The Wisdom of Edgar Cayce, and she's a contributing author to our magazine. She is a certified hypnotherapist who studied with pioneers in past life regression, such as Delores Cannon, Roger Woolger, and John Amoroso. So allow me to introduce Ms. Cheryl Baer-Bernath.
Thank you, Allison. Am I on? It's 3:33. Can you hear me? Yes. Oh. So happy to be here, and I want to welcome everybody. How many people have not been to A.R.E. before? Newbies? Oh, welcome especially to you. And yes, I used to be on staff. Right now I'm volunteering, and this is my favorite thing to do because I love sharing about dreams because I actually use them very practically in my life. And so one of the things that I'm going to be doing a little bit later is I'm going to give you a dream experiment. So I'll give you something really practical that you can take home and try in order to get some dream guidance on a particular question. I think you can agree with me that there's so much slanted information and there's so much information out there. Sometimes it's really important to be able to find ways of getting your own information from a really true source. And so my intention is that something I say today will speak to each and every one of you. And so if you've not been here before, we're going to take a moment and we're just going to set our intention. Okay, because the Cayce reading said that it's very important. Intentions are very powerful, especially if you do it in a group. So people at home, you can do the same thing. And just take a moment and get comfy and close your eyes. Take a nice deep breath and let it out. And we're setting our intention to just be present for this hour. And that way you can hear whatever is specifically for you. Thank you. See, you'll notice I tell people to let the breath out too, because we always have those people that are really into rules, and I tell them to take a deep breath, and if I forget to tell them to let it out, they'll be turning purple back there. So thank you for following the rules. And I like to start out by telling you kind of how I got involved in the dream thing. And usually there's a number of people that have had a similar experience. When I was really young as I can remember actually, I had a recurring dream. Anybody here ever had a recurring? Yeah. Don't you kind of feel like someone's trying to get your attention when you have the same dream over and over? So my particular dream was a little bit of a nightmare, and I was a passenger in a car, and I'm on a high mountain road. So we're on this really twisty mountain road, no guardrails, and I'm holding on for dear life to the side of that car. And every time we'd get to the same curve, and the car would skid towards the edge, and it would go over a cliff, and I would wake up before I hit the ground. Every time. So even to this day, I still have that dream once in a while, but I stopped having it quite so much. as Allison said, I'm from Buffalo. Buffalo is not really very hilly, so the environment was not one I was really familiar with, but it kept coming up in a dream. So I'm going to leave that with you, and as we go over some different possibilities, I'll let you think about that, and at the end I'm going to tell you the end of that dream, because there's a caveat to that came a number of years later. So I started journaling, as Allison said, about 1980, and I was a professional singer at the time, and I was on the road. Great for dream study because I did not have to get up in the morning. And getting up to an alarm clock can have a little bit of an effect on whether you remember your dreams or not. And I will be giving some tips in a little bit on how to better remember your dreams. So I started keeping a journal. I had all my Cayce books on the road with me, and I was highlighting everything, and the guys in the band thought I was crazy, and they were saying, "What are you highlighting things for?" And I said, "I don't know, but I'll know later." So now we know why I was highlighting things. And so I came down here in 91. I started keeping a journal in 1980, and it kind of a spiritual journal. I found in one of the Cayce books that it was suggested in the readings that it was a really good idea to keep a spiritual journal of your dreams and of synchronicities and maybe any psychic experiences that you may have. So that's what I did. And I came down to A.R.E. in 91, and I was in massage school. And we had a dream interpretation class with Mark Thurston. And it was really interesting, and I think that I found for the first time that I finally could make sense of my dreams in a practical way. In other words, I've been using them. I was very curious about them, and I thought they were fascinating, but I don't think I really had any idea what to do with them in kind of a practical sense until I took that class. So one of the things that was suggested by Mark was to start keeping a dream journal, and I had already done that since 1980. So I thought, well, I think I'll go back and I'll read my journals because I had never really looked at them before. So I went back, and one night I picked up my first journal, and it was around the same time of year. It was within a week of Easter when I picked it up, and that's the same time I had started writing 11 years earlier. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And I had done a lot of same things that day, and my life had changed considerably, so I found that kind of interesting. And I had to go to an appointment, so I put my book down, and I went to get ready, and I was in the bathroom, and I knocked over this little plastic jewelry case that I have. And I only had about 5 pieces of jewelry in it that I wore all the time. So as I was picking them up off the floor, I found this little onyx and diamond ring. And it was my ring. I hadn't seen it in years. And I had only lived in that apartment for less than a year. And I thought, where did this come from? I always really liked this ring, but I had no idea where it came from. So I put it on my finger, and I went to my appointment. And later that night, I came home, and I picked up the journal that I'd been reading, and on the next page, there was a little entry, and it said, "I had a dream last night that I found a little onyx and diamond ring, and I put it on my finger." Now think about that. Did that get my attention? I had written that 11 years ago, and the day that I read it in that journal is the day that it happened. So it kind of said a couple things to me. One was, and this is a point that I really want to make with you, it's really important to write your dreams down because you may not remember something really important. I probably would never have remembered that dream because it really didn't have that much of a story. I found a ring, I put it on. But when it actually happened 11 years later, it would be what was one of the things mentioned in the Cayce readings was a precognitive dream, or knowing ahead. 11 years. So if you're keeping track of your dreams, I think I would be very surprised to find if many of you would not have had the same experience, that you're also having some dreams that actually may be literal. And if you went to a psychotherapist and you were talking about your dreams, the one thing you're probably not going to hear, unless it's a Cayce-based counselor here, maybe in Virginia Beach, is that your dream was literal, okay? A precognitive dream or knowing ahead. Also, the other thing that it said, besides that it was very important to be writing my dreams down, was that time wasn't exactly what I thought as well. You know, there was that strange meeting or synchronicity of actually having the dream and then it happening a little bit later. So that really got my attention. And I want to say one thing from the Cayce readings. That particular dream was what we might call a psychic dream. And Cayce said we're all psychic. Psychic just means of the soul. So we all have a soul, we're all psychic, we all have this opportunity to have these kinds of amazing experiences. And we're often having them when we're dreaming at night. We may not be actually remembering them. But the flip side of this, that particular dream was literal, but also in the Cayce readings, you'll see that oftentimes when you're working on dreams, it's not really a case of either or. The dream means either this, you know, it's symbolic or it may be literal. It's not a case of either or, but a lot of times it's both and. So a lot of times you'll have different levels of interpretation going on when you're having a dream. So keep that in mind as well. This kind of symbolic level that might have been going on in that dream was that someone finds something meaningful that was lost. And to me, and I just thought about this the other day, I've been thinking about it pretty much in a literal sense, but I thought about it, the idea of working with dreams, the idea of the importance of dreams, you know, is something that in some indigenous and ancient societies was something that was very, very important, but in our society, it's gotten lost in a lot of cultures. So why dreams are really important in my experience, for one thing, it's sort of like it gives you an overview or a higher perspective on what's going on in your life. So imagine that you're in the savannah and you're in this deep grass. They have elephant grass in Africa. So you're in really deep grass and you can't see very far. So imagine that there's a mountain right next to you. And if you go up that mountain and you look down where you were just standing, you might see a little imprint in the grass there. You might see there was a tiger 3 feet from where you were just standing. But you couldn't see it when you were on the ground. And that's kind of where we are. You know, when we're only using our 5 senses, we can't really see everything that's going on. And in our dreams and meditation and prayer, Cayce said 3 of the main spiritual tools for spiritual evolution, you can kind of go up that mountain and look down and see where you are in your life. You know, you can see your path, where are you headed right now, so you can make maybe different choices. So you have that higher perspective going on. And the other thing is that a kind of a different way of looking at dreams that we don't normally think is over and over in the Cayce readings. They said spirit is the life, mind is the builder, and physical is the result. So the Cayce readings tell us most of what we're dreaming about is what we're focused on. What are we thinking about? What are our issues? What's going on in our lives right then? Okay, so here we have thoughts over here, and we're actually creating something physical down the line. Before we actually create something, I mean, you know, this table, the chairs, everything in this room was a thought first before it was created. Someone had to think what material, you know, to make the chair out of. We're going to put a little ledge under there to put people's notebooks, how much padding. So everything was a thought first. So our thoughts are so powerful because the readings tell us we're creating, we're co-creating. Well, in between that time that we're thinking and we've actually created something physical, we're having dreams. So we have this period of grace in there before we create something that gives us the opportunity to kind of see where we're going, see what track we're on, and kind of review things on another level before we actually create them. So sometimes you'll hear about people having dreams, maybe they're creating an illness. The Cayce reading said it was possible through thoughts, maybe worry, fear thoughts over and over and over, that down the line you could create a physical illness in your body. But your dreams are going to give you feedback before that actually happens. And we have the choice as to whether to listen to that feedback or not. And also sometimes it's just a matter of learning to understand the message that we're getting. So thank goodness on the earth plane we have that delayed time before we can create something. Because think about all the times you might have gotten really furious at somebody, and if you could create something right within a minute, it could have been disastrous. So we have time to kind of work with our thoughts a little bit before we actually have created or manifested something. So we're getting practical guidance every night in our dreams. And if we learn to remember them, and we can teach ourselves to remember them and teach ourselves to work with them, we'll have more information to work with. So you're usually dreaming about what you've been thinking about, what you're focused on, what you've been praying for. Sometimes people don't remember. You know how they say, be careful what you ask for? Have you ever had that experience where you created something and you went, oh yeah, maybe I should have been more specific. I was kind of asking for something, but I got something a little unintended. So this is where I think this is really helpful, and you may have seen this if you've seen some Cayce books. This is kind of a model of consciousness. So it tells us what's going on when we're dreaming, like kind of what state we're in. So it's got 3 parts here. Here we have our little sleeping lady down in the bottom. She could be doing a reading like Edgar Cayce, or she might be meditating. It's kind of the same thing going on. You're going up these levels. So we're headed, as we're dreaming, as we're falling asleep, we're kind of headed up this way. Okay? Now, this little part at the bottom, that little tiny V, is our conscious mind. So it's kind of where our 5 senses are, where we are most of the day when we're just kind of going about our day. If you move up here, you'll notice the subconscious area is much bigger. We've got more information available to us. So, if there's an accident, sometimes they'll hypnotize people, and they'll find out that the person actually saw a whole lot more than they consciously realized. Because a lot of what we see and what we take in is going into our subconscious. And some of it is memories from our childhood that we may not even consciously remember, but they come up in our dreams. And we'll say, where is that coming from? Sometimes it's coming from memories that we're not consciously aware of. Then as we move up a little farther, we get into the really cool part. And Cayce readings call this the superconscious. And if you'll notice, there's no cap on this part. It just goes on infinitely. So we have this amazing potential that is limitless of information that we can get, guidance that we can get in the superconscious as we go to sleep at night. And if you think about it, if you flip this whole thing over, so you had it this way, if you've ever seen an iceberg, okay, and you see the iceberg, it looks huge. But now that they have underwater cameras and they can back up, and you see what's underwater, maybe 90% of the iceberg is underwater. Okay, we think the conscious mind and our 5 senses, in many cases, is this huge thing. It's all there is. But underneath the surface, underneath the water, we've got all this other potential. And we're just using such a tiny potential of our brains. And in the Cayce readings, they actually talk about, how many people have heard of the Akashic records? Anybody? Okay, quite a lot of people. So the Cayce readings describe this as like when he was doing a reading for someone, he saw himself going to an actual library. This is how he saw it in his mind. And he would pick out a book of life for that particular person. And the readings tell us we all have a book of life up there that records all our thoughts, all our actions, everything that's happened in our lives. So we can also access that when we're dreaming, and sometimes we do. So we can get information about maybe why you have a particular issue with somebody, or where a particular physical illness has come from in the Akashic records. Now, one of the sometimes people are horrified by the thought that their thoughts are actually being recorded as well as their actions, because a lot of us have a pretty good handle on our actions. But the really hopeful thing is in the readings it says that our intentions are also recorded. So sometimes things can go awry, but our intentions were good, and they're also recorded in the Akashic records. So this is another kind of destination place that sometimes we're going to in our dreams. So we've got a lot more potential, and if we're trying to make decisions, we actually have a lot more information available to us. So why in the world, if God or the divine mind, or the universal mind, whatever you want to label our source, is going to communicate with us, and the Cayce reading said that's happening when we're dreaming, why in that crazy way, when there are pigs flying through the air and people are changing, you're talking to someone and suddenly they've changed into Geraldo Rivera, while you're talking to them, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. But if you think about it, think about what happens when you're having a nightmare, okay? Your body experiences it as if it's real. Okay, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, you can sweat. If you've ever watched your dog sleeping, my dog runs in his sleep. You'll see all his little feet going, and he'll be barking in his sleep. If you watch a baby sleep, you'll see REM, you'll see rapid eye movement. What's going on there? They've found that when they take people in a lab and they put electrodes on them, on their head, and then they let them go to sleep, and when rapid eye movement starts, if they wake them up, they will remember a dream. So some of whether we're remembering our dreams or not has to do with when we're waking up, how we're waking up. Okay, it's there, and they found it's, we can't put electrodes on everyone's heads, apparently, but everyone they've tested, they make a generalization that everybody dreams, because I've, had people come in a few times and said, I don't dream at all. Well, it's this, probably you are dreaming, but you're not remembering. And so there are some tricks that you can do that will help you remember, I'll share. So that's going on as well. And so your body is reacting as if it's real. Think about, the Cayce readings often call this Earth School. We're kind of in Earth School, and we're learning things like unconditional love. We're learning forgiveness. We're learning how to work together. We're learning unity by sometimes experiencing the exact opposite, by contrast. So all that is going on. Your body's reacting as if it's real. And so when you're trying to teach somebody something, the best way is usually through experience, right? Don't learn as much through reading about it, but if you have that experience, people are more likely to learn from that. So it's a different language. Dreams are like a different language. It's not so much words, but it's more a language of emotions and a language of images. Sometimes feelings. People experience different things in their dreams. Occasionally, people will smell something, or, it depends on what senses come through. It's different for different people. But it's mainly pictures and emotions. So think about the network news. Do they know that a picture with a lot of emotion is going to get your attention and make you remember it? Because if you read a story in the newspaper, you're much less likely to remember it than if you see something very dramatic with an image that is going to stick in your mind. So when we're working with our dreams, it's sort of like learning to work with a different language. And if you had this really, really important question that you wanted answered, and someone came up to you and they gave you the answer, and you looked at it, and it was in Japanese, and you don't speak Japanese or you don't read Japanese, you probably wouldn't just throw it away, but you probably would either learn to read Japanese or find someone to help you with Japanese, because it's important to you. So it's kind of what we're doing when we're having dreams, and it's almost like we're getting letters from God. In the Hebrew tradition, they're actually considered letters from God. You know, we would open them, you would think, but a lot of people, you know, and not really knowing, they're just kind of throwing those letters in a closet, you know, and not really opening them. So it's really important to start paying attention, because they really do have meaning. So dreams really get your attention. If you have a nightmare, it gets your attention. If you don't pay attention, if you ever had the experience where you may know that you're supposed to do something, like forgive somebody, something, and you kind of know it, and the universe kind of taps you on the shoulder very gently and gives you some lesson to kind of remind you that maybe you should be forgiving somebody, and you kind of don't really pay attention. And then, you know, you get a little harder tap on the shoulder, and maybe you don't pay attention so much. You might have a nightmare. Okay, you might not realize it's connected. You might have a nightmare. And the next thing, if you're not paying attention, because you're trying to get the messages trying to come through in dreams, you might actually have something happen in what we call the waking dream, or your real life. Okay, maybe you'll have an actual car accident or something physical that stops you and gets your attention to that particular issue. So better that we pay attention to the messages we're getting in between before we've created something. So, you know, you may say, well, my dreams don't seem to be making any sense, but we really need to practice with them and be persistent and have some patience, because we're learning a new language here. How they were important to Cayce, according to the Cayce readings, they're a major tool for spiritual growth. Here, those letters that we're sometimes throwing away. They're a direct line of communication with God, with your higher self, with the divine mind. And they're source of practical information. And the Cayce readings say something really interesting, in that dreams don't tell you what to do. They only give you more information, because we're in the realm of free will down here. Okay? So we can be asking a question and will not be told what to do, but we'll be given more information with which to make a choice, because that's how you learn, is making choices. If your choices were all made for you, we wouldn't be learning very much. So we have that going on. It would violate free will for us to be being told what to do. So let's give you some tips on how to remember your dreams. It's a good start. If you're not remembering them, you're not going to be able to work with them. There are a couple things before you go to bed. Have materials ready to write it down. And if you're not a writing down kind of person, which some people aren't, you can buy little recorders, little digital recorders, and you can record your dream. They've got book lights. You can put a little book light on your dream journal, so you don't have to wake anyone else up in the house. Get enough sleep, because if you're only getting a couple hours sleep, sometimes you're not getting to the brainwave state where you're actually going to be able to have a dream. So try to get enough sleep. I know for some people that's a little bit hard. The alarm clock. Think about what the alarm clock is made to do. It's made to shock you awake. So most alarm clocks, well, now that you can use your phone, you can wake up a little more gently. There are some alarm clocks, like Zen clocks, and you can get them on the internet, that wake you up gradually so that you don't have to move to set it to snooze or shut it off. And that's a really important point, because if you don't move when you wake up, you're much more likely to remember what you were dreaming. So you can use a snooze alarm. If you don't have this other kind of alarm clock, you can use a snooze and just set your intention and say, I'm going to use those 10 minutes, if that's how long your snooze goes, to just remember my dreams and stay in the state for 10 minutes before I start thinking about making breakfast and what I'm going to wear and, the daily things that you have to get to. If you affirm, and affirmations are setting your intention. As the reading said, affirmations, intentions are really powerful. So one thing you can affirm before you go to bed, that you will remember, that you will understand, and that you'll be able to apply. Because application is the key, according to the Cayce readings. You can get all this information and all this wonderful esoteric knowledge, but if you don't apply them in your own life, it's pretty much wasted. So if we're going to ask for dream guidance, we need to be applying it as well. So we're affirming that we'll remember it, that we can add that you will record it, that you'll understand it, and that you will apply it. If you focus on your question before you go to bed, if you have a particular question that you want answered, focus on that before you go to bed. It's a really bad idea to go to sleep listening to TV going, because you're sort of moving into this really suggestible state up here, and you start incorporating things that you're getting in on an audio level into your dreams, which may not be particularly a good thing depending on what's going on TV when you're sleeping, which may change, if you've gone to sleep. So remember that as well. After you wake up, lie still, or, and this is a trick you won't often hear, but it works really well, get back in the same position you were in when you were sleeping. Because your body has a memory for position that's related to your thoughts. And I learned that as well when I was doing body work. You can work on somebody, doing massage on somebody, and cranial sacral, the same thing. You touch a certain portion of the body, or you get somebody in a certain position, and the memory will come back. Well, this is really helpful when you're trying to remember your dreams. So if you wake up and you've rolled over onto your back and you normally sleep on your side, get back on your side. Sometimes, boom, it will be back. It's kind of amazing. But it seems to be there is a very strong connection with the position you were in when you were dreaming. And I've experimented with this a little bit and found sometimes I'll get on one side and a dream will come back and I'll go, oh yeah, I remember that. And then I'll get on the other side and I'll get one that I had way earlier in the night and be kind of amazed that that's still there. So getting back in the same position works really well. When you're remembering the dream, if you could tell it to somebody, that kind of helps. If you keep your eyes closed, it's another memory for position. So you're more likely to remember more of the dream if your eyes are closed when you're relating it to somebody. But I would say don't have them comment on it yet, because you are your best dream interpreter. It says it in the Cayce readings, and I believe Edgar. Okay? So wait until you've worked on it a little bit before you have someone else comment on it. I found people often don't trust themselves very well. And if somebody comes up with some amazing interpretation, which may be on or not, they get stuck on it, and then they can't actually get past that interpretation. So do your work on it first. Write something down, anything, because it primes the pump. So if you wake up and you don't remember a thing, pay attention to where your mind goes immediately. It's kind of like one of those games that the psychiatrists used to play with an association with a word. Okay, so if you're dreaming and you wake up and you're just in a sweat and you're so anxious and you cannot remember what that dream was, but your mind just happens to start, you know how your mind wanders, starts to think about your boss or your mother-in-law or some issue, some person, some setting There you've got a clue. You have your first clue, even if you don't remember your dream, because we're kind of storing things up there in our brain according to emotions, similar emotions. So if most of what we're dreaming about is working things out that we've been thinking about, then that's going to be a really good clue. So write that down, even if you don't remember anything else. Okay, and has anyone ever had the experience of having a song in their head first thing in the morning? Pay attention to the lyrics of the song. We often think we have, okay, we've got that earworm, that song that's stuck, you know. That can be a clue as well. If you have something stuck in your head, listen to the lyrics. Sometimes we don't even know. I've Googled lyrics and found out it was an answer to a question or something I had been working on, and it was amazingly an answer. So that can come up as well. So as you're recording your dream, I found the easiest way to do it is do it like it's a movie. Okay, pretend you're in a movie, because this way you'll get all your little pieces that you can work with. And I'm going to give you an example in a little bit. So in a movie, you're going to have a setting. Okay, where's your dream set? And that may change, because usually dreams have a few scenes. We think we're having maybe you remember 5 dreams. And you think, well, I had all these crazy dreams. They're not really related to each other, but if you're asking a question about something, thinking about it, if you're watching a movie, you know, the first scene, you might be at the beach and there's a shark chasing somebody. And then the next scene, you're in Paris and people are eating dinner. And then in the next scene, someone's going up this long staircase and tripping. But it's all telling the same story. It's just facets of the same story, kind of like a diamond. So we're looking at things from a different angle. So pay attention that I always write down my dreams as scene 1, scene 2. So I've got scenes going on. We've got characters. Who was in your dream? Okay, so you're keeping track of the characters. What was the plot? What was actually happening? And when we worked on, when we did the dream class with Mark Thurston, 2 things that were really emphasized when Cayce did his, when he helped people interpret their dreams were the plot, what was happening, and the feelings. Very often people forget to write down how they felt, because that's going to be a really big clue as to what the dream was about. So there you've got your plot, you've got some drama, because it would be a lousy movie if you didn't have any drama. So you've got some drama, you'll have props, so you've got some symbols to play with. And symbols are really interesting because people get really hung up on the symbols, and think about it. Symbols are going to be different for every person. We do have some universal symbols: birth, death, eating. There are some things that universally human beings do. But even culturally, symbols are going to be different. If you had a dream and you're in a very Christian Western culture, and you had a dream about a snake, and say you came from the Bible Belt, and you've been reading a lot of the Bible. Well, the snake in the Bible is evil and darkness and Satan. But if you came from an Eastern culture, and the snake represents Kundalini force or life force, can mean a completely different thing. So there you've got differences culturally. You've got differences individually as well. I had a friend when I was growing up who told me this really funny story, and that was when his mother and father used to want to be alone romantically, and they would send the kids out of the house, they would tell the kids they were counting money. Okay, this was their euphemism when they wanted to be alone. We're counting money. You need to leave mom and daddy alone and go to the movies or whatever. So think about it. That family, if you have a dream about counting money, is going to mean something completely different than most people would think about counting money. So individually, your experience with that particular image or that particular thing is going to affect what that means for you. So that means if you pick up a dream dictionary, they're wonderful. They can give you really wonderful ideas, but sometimes you'll look at it and say, this I can't relate to that. That makes no sense to me. That's because your experience may have been different with that particular thing. So pay attention to what that particular thing that sticks out means for you. What's your experience been with that thing? You know, if we both had a dream about a horse, and I grew up with horses, and to me, riding horses was freedom and just joy, and maybe you got kicked or fell off when you were a kid, and to you, having that dream would be something that was terribly fearful, you know? It means something completely different. So you can even come up with your own dream dictionary as you start recording your dreams, as when is that particular symbol coming up for you, okay, in your dreams. So that's something that you can do, actually make your own. And you know, one of the reasons that you're your best dream interpreter is you know the context. You have lived your life. You know the context. You know what you've been thinking about. You know what you've been worrying about. You know, what thoughts have been obsessing you, or what issues you've been working on. So you are your own best dream interpreter. So, as I said, you can divide into different scenes and record as much detail as you can, because it might be helpful later. If you wake up in the middle of the night, and many people will probably have had the same experience, you can have the most profound dream ever and think, I will never forget that, okay? And go, I'm too tired to write that down, and go back to sleep. And when you wake up, it's gone. And you know it was the most profound dream you ever had, but it's gone. So I would say, even if you just write down one little thing like, oh, I got bit by a dog, usually you can pull the thread back of the important parts of that dream. Okay, so you have something to work with. So recording it is really, really important. So I want to get into giving you your dream experiment, because this will actually show you how to work with a dream once you've had it. And the idea of this is to take a question, something that has some real meaning to you, that you really need an answer to, and we're going to take it to the higher source. We're going to take it to the highest source we can to get information on this question. And I'll tell you, it's based on the Cayce material, and it's only 4 steps. It's really easy. And I'll tell you how this came about with me using it in any case. I had a friend who came to me who was a very spiritual person who I love dearly, and I know he has the greatest intentions. And he had a financial investment that he was telling people about, because he said, this is really wonderful. I know some people that are doing it. They're making a lot of money. He told my church, because they were always short on money, and he wasn't getting any kind of a kickback. Now, I'm thinking, I don't know how to evaluate this, because I'm not a financial person. I don't really understand. I don't really know a lot about investments. I've never made an investment before. So I thought, okay, well, I could go to a financial advisor. I could go on the internet, but we almost have too much information now. You know, it's harder to make a decision almost with too much information. You get on the internet, you could spend years going off in different directions getting information. So I thought, okay, I've been kind of praying for abundance, so I was looking at my context. What was I thinking about? I thought it could be the answer to a prayer or not. So how do I evaluate that? So I've been recording my dreams and working with my dreams for like 30 years, and I thought, well, why don't I just ask for dream guidance and see if this works? So there are a couple steps that you can take to do this, and this is what I did. First one, really important. In the Cayce readings, the most important thing that you can do in this incarnation is set your spiritual ideal. So it gives you the context for your question. Because 2 different people with different ideals asking the same question could get a different answer, and it would be correct for them. So a spiritual ideal might be, I really like these when they had the little bracelets, WWJD, what would Jesus do? That's a really cool spiritual ideal. Okay? That person was going to act the way they thought that Jesus would respond to any situation. Then I saw a great bumper sticker, and I have to remember it's related to the WWJD. It was HWJD on their bumper sticker, and that was, how would Jesus drive? I just really like that. So your spiritual ideal could be a person, it could be Jesus, it could be Buddha, it could be someone incarnated like the Dalai Lama, someone who is expressing those qualities that spiritually you are aiming for. It could be just a concept like unconditional love or forgiveness. Okay, it's something that's going to resonate to you as a person. What are you here for spiritually? So think about it. When you set your spiritual ideal, anytime you have to make a decision, you have something to measure it against. So you've got your spiritual ideal, you're pointed in that direction. If I do this, I'm proposing a course of something I might do. Is that going to match? Is it going to keep me on my spiritual course? Does it match my spiritual ideal or not? Is it going to send me off in the bushes for 10 years until I get back to where I was through a poor choice? Okay? So first you're setting your spiritual ideal. Then you set a course of action. So in this case, I actually set a spiritual ideal around an investment. And I thought, okay, this will be my spiritual ideal. Nobody can be getting hurt. Now, the positive framing of that would be everybody has to be benefiting along the line of this investment, okay? Because there are investments where people make a lot of money and a lot of people get hurt. Mortgage scams and things that ruin the environment. So that was my context. Now think about it. Somebody else who set an ideal, maybe you don't think it's very spiritual, but what if someone set an ideal that they wanted to be a millionaire by the time they were 30, but they were going to do really good things with the money or something? They might get a different answer. Okay, so the spiritual ideal is really important. It's your basis. Then I said, okay, if I do this investment, I'm proposing my course, does it match? Yes or no? So you're setting your question in a yes or no fashion. This is the easiest way to start working with a dream rather than just asking for more information. So you say, does it match or not? And then, this is the best part, you have to let go to the attachment to the answer. And if it's something that's really important to you, it can be a little hard to do. Okay, but the way I did it is I kind of tricked myself into it, and I said, okay, if this worked, how cool would this be if I found that I could use this to get answers to things, and I could use it in other areas of my life? It would save a lot of time and energy. It would be worth a whole lot more than making a lot of money. So I went to bed and I was kind of excited, and I went, this is really exciting. Okay, so I let go of attachment. So I set my spiritual ideal. I proposed a course that I was going to take and said, does that match? And then I let go of the attachment. I would be happy with either answer as long as it was right, as long as it was true. So here's the dream that I had, and now I have to tell you, I have never had such a clear dream ever. And I woke up and I laughed because it was so clear to me what my answer was. This may not always happen, especially the first time you try this, but okay, I had two scenes in my dream. My first scene is that I'm in a kind of wealthy environment. It's a little dark though. It's dark paneling, it's a little dark. And I'm dating someone in this dream, and it's somebody that I know in this life who is an absolute vortex of chaos. Everywhere he goes, there's yelling and drama and confusion. And I'm thinking to myself in the dream, this would be a horrible match. Now, what had I asked? I even got the same terminology back because I had asked, is this investment a good match? Okay? So everything in the dream, I'm kind of comparing back to could this relate to an investment? Okay? It's a bad match. I've got my first red flag there. Then, this person that I'm dating in the dream is also dating someone on the sly. So there's something hidden, there's something dishonest going on. Can that relate to an investment? Yes. There can be dishonesty. Maybe everything is not above board here. Okay, so I got another red flag. The third thing is the person that I was dating is drinking a martini and it's made of blood. Big red flag. Because what did I ask? I asked, nobody can be getting hurt. Okay, so there's another, what I'm getting so far is this is not a good match, okay? So now I have my next scene. It was only 2 scenes in this particular movie of mine, and the universe definitely has a good sense of humor, because in the second scene, I'm in a big fancy yacht, and it's a beautiful sunny day, and I'm riding along and you'll get sometimes puns in your dreams because they're little packets of information that everybody kind of understands, okay? And one thing that came up in this dream is someone's being taken for a ride. Now, when you're talking about an investment, someone being taken for a ride is not a good thing, okay? It usually means you're being taken advantage of. So here I am being taken for a ride, can't see the people that are driving. And this reminds me of when I'm reading the papers about the investment, it's not really clear who's the investor here. It was very unclear, but I thought, well, maybe it's just because I don't know lawyerese and I'm not understanding this. So that reminded me also of my investment. So the kicker is, at the back of the yacht, you'll see this long rope, and it's going to a little tiny boat, and it's not a shabby boat, and in the dream I know that's my boat. And they're pulling my boat along. And as they're pulling my boat, it's going over spits of land, it's going over rocks, things are flying off my boat, and I'm horrified as I'm watching this. Okay? They're not having any respect for my property. Now that's the plot. That's what's happening in this particular scene. Does that relate to an investment? Yes, it could. Okay, my little bit of an investment would have been like that little boat, and their big investment would have been like the big yacht if they're taking money from all kinds of people. So I'm getting another red flag. Then I get thrown into the water. I'm in over my head. Okay, I pull myself up onto a dock, and I'm standing on the dock, dripping soaking wet, and I say, this was a horrible experience. I even got my little caption. It was almost like CNN. You know, you always want those in your dream. I want an explanation to run across the bottom. Well, this was a horrible experience. So I pretty much got my answer, right? So now you get to say, are you going to follow your guidance or not? Because we are in the realm of free will, okay? And we have the choice. I've got my information. I decided it was clear enough that I was not going to do that because it felt really bad. But a whole bunch of people that I know did. And this wouldn't mean a thing if I didn't know what happened. And in the end, the money all disappeared. Everyone's money disappeared. There were so many agencies investigating this investment, I can't tell you. One person did end up in prison. They don't know where anyone's money went. A lot of people went bankrupt. A lot of people got hurt. So I'm really sorry that that happened. And the flip side of that is that it showed me that my guidance was spot on, correct. And so far is what I got from that dream. So that's sort of an example. Most people know when you're asked your question and you get your dream back, what feels good and what feels really bad, you know? And your yes answers will feel really good. They'll feel like, you know, meeting people that you feel like you've met all your life and you're hugging them and you feel like, oh, that person's, you know, I've known them my whole life. Well, that's kind of a yes answer. And those kind of nightmarish scenes that you get can be kind of a no answer. as well. So if anybody has any questions about that, in about 5 minutes, I'll get you and we can do that. But before we end, I wanted to tell you the rest of the story of the beginning that I told you at the beginning. Okay. So we've been working with some different scenarios here with dreams. So as I said in the beginning, the dream that I had, that recurrent dream where I kept going over a cliff in a car. About 25 years ago, now I had that dream when I was really little. About 25 years ago, I was dating someone, and I was on my first date. And we did not know each other well, and we really had not talked a lot before we went on this date. And we're driving along, and he turns to me and he says, I had the most vivid dream I've ever had last night. He said, I had this dream that I was in this big old car. He said, it was kind of an antique-y kind of car, and if we went to an antique show, I could tell you what color it was and everything. He said, I'm driving this car on this really high, twisty mountain road. And he said, I'm going really fast, and I go around a turn, and the car skids towards the edge, and it goes off this cliff, and I woke up before I hit the bottom. What does that mean? And it still makes all my hair stand on end, because I said, you just had my dream. That's my dream that I had, over and over when I was a kid. Now, I'm really curious if anyone thinks like I do, because the first thing that I thought of to ask was somebody in the car with you? And he said, he was driving, and in my dream, I was on the passenger side. And he said, I don't know. I couldn't see who was in the car with me. And in my dream, I couldn't see who was driving. So what this brings up is a whole other possibility in the Cayce readings, and that is, of course, Edgar Cayce talked about past lives, and that we actually would remember sometimes past life connections in our dreams. So because of our age, it is possible that that particular kind of a car would have existed before both of us were born, and it's kind of a really interesting possibility, isn't it? In the readings, the basically what they said about reincarnation was that we are not a body with a spirit, but we're a spirit just temporarily inhabiting this physical vehicle. And we're changing, just like we change clothes. We come back, we change roles. We're male, we're female, we're rich, we're poor. We're kind, we're cruel. We experience everything in order to grow spiritually and learn unconditional love and learn to forgive. So those kind of things can also be coming up in your dreams as well, which is really a fascinating thing. And I guess what I sort of want to leave you with is that, despite the apparent craziness in this world, especially right now, we're divine beings, we're co-creators. We're creating with God, and we have access to help through our dreams. We have access to guidance, and we can ask for help. And the Cayce readings say we all have guardian angels, at least one. Some people have more than one. So we have help waiting for us on the other side as well. So when you try this experiment, please, if something really interesting happens, let me know, because I've had a couple people come back and give me some feedback that was really interesting. And so I guess it's 4:30 right now, and if anybody does have to leave, please feel free to leave. I've really appreciated your being here. If you have questions or you have some things you want to share, I'm glad to stay for a little while and answer some questions. And thank you. Thanks so much. And also, the ladies at the front desk have some coupons for 10% off in the bookstore that you can pick up from being in this lecture as well. So anybody have any questions or something they want to share before we leave? Yeah?
Do you think people that have passed from your life that are very, very important to you?
Mhm.
That was my husband, and I've had dreams of him that were so incredibly vivid.
Yeah.
Is that his spirit, or is that just mine?
Okay, the question is about having dreams from somebody who has passed. And it's really interesting, that is almost always the first question after I finish, because that's something that happens with people. And they're wondering, is it real? Is that person actually visiting? Or, is it just wishful thinking? And the Cayce reading said, there are a couple things that can be going on. The quality of it, feels when you're actually having a visitation, and Cayce said yes, they can absolutely come visit in dreams, is usually very special, and it's different, and it feels different, and you feel like you've actually visited with that person. Sometimes people get hugged. There's a feeling that you've been with that person. Now, if they show up in your dream, and sometimes they can represent something else as well, but that usually is in a regular dream kind of scenario, and not just somebody, like I had one with my father, showed up at my door, and I opened the door and actually hugged him, and it was actually, a real meeting, and there wasn't any real story. It was just that, we got to be together. So absolutely, the Cayce readings say, and the only thing that, we have a lot of mediums that come in here and talk about this kind of thing, and they would agree that sometimes what keeps people from having those kind of experiences is because they're so in grief that their vibration is so different that the person that's on the other side can't reach them. And so sometimes they'll come to someone else who may not know them as well to give a message to take to that person, because they can't reach that person because they're too much in grief. And then the person might say, why didn't they come to me? I've heard people say it, they're really upset. And it seems that if it's you and you're the person really wanting and you're really in grief, there's always that little doubt that maybe you made it up because you wanted it so much. But if the message comes through somebody else, it takes that out of the equation. So yeah, I would say absolutely, and those are the best kind of dreams. I actually had a dream where I met Edgar Cayce, and I've always wanted to ask people, especially that worked here, how many people have had an experience like this. But my office used to be right there in the kitchen because I was the facilitator, and my computer was inside the door. And I had a dream, it was very short, wasn't even a minute long, that I walked into my office, and he was sitting on one of those stools that we have in the back there in my office, smoking a pipe, and Cayce did smoke once in a while, and he just smiled at me. And I woke up crying, and that was all there was to the dream. But he had the most twinkly eyes and such a sense of humor in his smile, and it was like seeing someone who you've lost in your family, and you get to see them again, and I was just overwhelmed. It was just really a special experience. So, and I knew that was different. It was a different kind of feeling than just, and there wasn't really any plot to it. That was just it. He didn't even say anything. We just saw each other. And very often the person won't say anything if you get a real visitation, because they don't need words over there.
That was it. We didn't need words or anything, but
Yeah.
vibrantly alive.
Yeah. That's lovely. Anybody else? Yeah.